Welcome to Green Mountain Online, a new experience for us all. Let me just get a chair. Okay. Usually I set up the other way. So my name is Sheila Browne and I'm a violist. I've been teaching at Green Mountain since its inception. So I don't know, that's been like 17 years now or something, I guess. So I'm glad you're all here, and I teach at the Tianjin Juilliard School in China, but of course right now I'm not there. I'm actually in Delaware in my house. So things are of course a little screwy for all of us right now, I know. I just wanted to get an idea, how many of you play each instrument? How do we do this via chat? So I'm assuming we have a bunch of violinists. Maybe you can just raise your hand if you're a violinist. Okay. Violists? Yep, okay. Any cellists? Okay, great. And any pianists? Okay, I think that's all we have at Green Mountain right now. Okay, great. So feel free to just ask any questions. Year 16, Amanda says, great, okay. And yes, I'm not so used to checking the chat box, but can you guys unmute yourselves as we go along if someone just has a burning question they really want to ask? Do you have that capability, or do I have to do that? Or Amanda has to? Okay, great. So feel free, if you just want to mute yourself and ask a question, if it seems like I'm not picking up on it in the chat box. But I'll use your questions to kind of, you know, find our way through the material. So, you know, sound production is of course very important to all of us. Many people of my generation and older bemoan the fact that the quality of sound in our world has not become as important, right? I mean, if Zoom isn't proof of this with its compressed sound, I don't know what isn't, what is. But even before that, you know, with the rise of stereo and the fact that YouTube is so popular now, individual sound is not like it used to be. I mean, it used to be we would hear these soloists like Heifetz or Misha Elman, and we would say, oh, I know exactly who that is, right? And nowadays it's like, well, you hear soloists on the radio or, you know, whatever, and you might not be able to tell exactly who that person is by their sound. So a lot of this, I think, has changed because of technology, and maybe also the way we think about playing instrumental music. Perhaps it has to do with the amount of perfectionism that we all aspire to and think is important, right? So there are things we can do about that. I mean, I think each one of us wants to have an individual voice and a meaningful voice that shows something about ourselves, right? That is really just ours and ours alone. Obviously, we need to change that depending on what style of music we're playing in and so on. But of course, a lot of this has to do with what my teacher, Karen Tuttle, would call the throb in your sound. Has to do with your vibrato, okay? So, and also the quality of your sound, right? Do you have a warm sound? Do you have a large sound? Do you have a dark sound as a violist? Or maybe you sound more like a violinist, more like the treble. So, you know, we can learn to deepen our dark overtones, right? We can learn to actually tap in more to the darker overtones. That way we also have more of a variety of sound, right? So if you tend to think that maybe you sound a little nasal, for example, there are things that you can do to work on this in your playing. And I'll tell you that most of this comes from the physical. By the way, Kevin, you're not muted and I hear you typing. Kevin, are you there? Okay, anyway. So what I thought I'd do is I'll take you through some of the physical things that I like to do to ground myself, okay? So if you think of a tree, and you guys are welcome to, you know, stand up and do some of these things with me, right? It's so much better if you do it with me and feel it in your own bodies rather than just like watching, okay? So just tell me if I'm going too fast or something. We can always just wait a moment so you guys have time to try out these things. But the idea of grounding is that we send body weight and energy down into the ground as if we have roots like a tree, okay? And that's actually pretty hard in our society because everything about industrialized society is up. We're supposed to be thinner, take up less space, wear high heels, and tread lightly upon this earth in so many different ways. I mean, we kind of have an anti-earth approach, right? In many instances of our daily lives. And shoes, of course, are a big part of that, right? Way back when we didn't wear shoes, we were much better in contact with the earth, how it felt. And, you know, walking on concrete a lot is also really hard on the human body. So we kind of instinctively brace ourselves against and away from the ground because of the negative influence of things like concrete, poor shoes, high heels. You know, when we get nervous, we stop breathing, we go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? That's another obvious instance of the idea of ungrounding. So if there is one thing that you take away from this hour, it is the importance of practicing grounding every single day as a musician, okay? I think this is super helpful for people, and all of us need more of it, okay? And I think it helps with everything we do on the instrument too. So one of the tenets of grounding is, you know, you think from the roots up, from the bottom up. So if you guys want to stand up, I'm going to have to see how the camera adjusts for this. And by the way, I'm putting out a series of short, like 10-minute videos on this sort of stuff. So if you want to go to my Facebook page or my YouTube channel, I'm starting to churn out a couple of videos on these sorts of things if you want more on the topic. Okay, so let me see. Feet, hips. Okay, if you all want to go ahead and stand up. Just want to make sure you can see me. So when we play our instruments, it's very important. I mean, we're talking under the chin people now. It's very important to stand hip width apart, okay? A lot of us have heard shoulder width apart. Shoulders, we tend to think of our shoulders are out, that they're way out here. That's too wide of a stance. Actually, the shoulder joints are inside. So if you actually know where your shoulder joints are, it does help to minimize the misunderstandings that happen with some of the terminology. We can also just bypass the misunderstandings by talking about hips. Your hip joints are in the front. You can palpate, feel your hip joints, where the femur of your thigh, your upper leg, comes into the pelvis, okay? So that's here. If you lift and drop several times and feel those joints, that is one of the first and most basic elements of grounding that you can do, is understand that your legs are two columns that support you. So it's like your basement. Okay, so that's the first thing. And if you're trying to find exactly how far apart that is, you can take a couple of steps forward and back, and then just stop and see how far apart your feet are. Okay, they're usually not quite as far apart as we were, as we thought, as we were taught to believe. Okay, notice I am not wearing shoes. It's the best way to ground, is to just not even wear them. Or wear flats, ladies, because the heels pivot you forward off of your center of gravity. The plumb line, so the center of gravity from the downwards vector, from the gravitational vector that we all deal with, unless we're astronauts on the moon or wherever, is through the front of the ankle. Okay, so let me see. See, I have to keep angling here. Okay, so as soon as I start to raise this way, I have gone forward of the plumb line, which is here. And that takes me out of a strong, well-grounded position. So most of the weight of your body will go somewhere through the heel, like the front of the heel, if you want to think of it that way. Okay. So that's the first very important fact. You know, these are basic biomechanical facts that a lot of us, personally, I wish I had learned it, you know, when I was 5 instead of when I was at Juilliard as an undergrad. But anyway, better late than never. So it's important that all of our joints move and that we have as much of a full rotation of all joints as possible, except for the sacroiliac joints, which are back here, that are really only supposed to move in childbirth. With that in mind, we want to make sure that our ankles do not lock when we play, and also that our knees do not lock. I know a lot of people, when they go to pick up the instrument, including myself when I was younger, who locked the knees and did something like this. Okay, that was a habit that I actually had to spend serious time making sure that I broke. I actually found a better habit, which was that the knees remain springy, okay? And the knees are actually either a little bit over the plumb line or over this part of the foot, okay? The ball of the foot, that, like over the big toe. So when you bend your knees should actually track and bend over, so they're going over, like between the big toe and the first toe. Okay, I'll try and show you that. So you can see where my knees are. They're like aligned here. If I tracked my knees so they go out towards the pinky toes, when I bent, I would go like this. You don't want that. You want your knees to like go straight ahead. Okay. A lot of people don't even know they lock their knees when they play. So if you want to work on that, just to see what you can discover, you can walk and play, which is one of the best things I think you can do. It's very hard to lock your joints when you're moving, right, when you're walking around. So if you have the good fortune to have a big enough practice space this summer where you can actually move around, I would suggest that you try that. It will show you how much tension you're using when you play if you have trouble walking and playing. There's many different ways to walk and play. One of them is to walk to the beat of the music you're playing in, right? I will try and demonstrate without losing. Okay, so that's the kind of more musical way. Now, I can also just walk casually, like at whatever pace I feel like it, and play at the same tempo. That's also a good exercise. So that looks like this. I'll try and not walk in tempo. Okay. So you can try and speed that up if, you know, it seems like you keep going back into the tempo, which is what I tend to do. So there's a third way. When I studied with the famous soloist Kim Kashkashian, that she taught me, which takes this to a higher musical level, and it has to do with walking, taking steps according to how important, how heavy the notes are in the phrase. So if it's less important, like it's the low point, you use smaller steps. And as you go into the climax, for example, where it's heavier, you take a big step. let me see if I can demonstrate that. And then when I'm done that, I'm going to look at the chat box because it looks like we may have some questions. Okay, so I don't know how much of that you could see because I'm not quite sure how much range I have with the camera, but I try to take bigger and heavier steps where I think the music opens up into something that's louder and more passionate in this case. Okay, let's see, questions. Yes, cellists, okay. Oh, about the direction in which they point. A cellist is asking about the tracking of the knees over the big toe and the first toe. Yes, I think it still applies because you guys need to roll out the hip joints. Okay, so when you go to play the cello, let's just pretend you are rolling. Okay, you've got a ball and socket joint for each leg, okay? So if you can see my feet, no, you can't. I still want my knees to be tracking over those two toes, okay? When I go to stand up, for example, in this position, let me show you that. I can still come up this way. Okay, and then, you know, go back to my normal width of placement of the legs. So let me show you from this side. I'm trying my best to get the camera. So this is really important for all of us to do because of course we all sit a lot too, right? Orchestra, chamber music, all that is to make sure that you know where your sits bones are. This is a great grounding mechanism. They're like the heels in your pelvis. So that's the great grounding mechanism that is totally important if you want to have no back pain for your whole career. You have to learn to open up your back by sitting on your sits bones. Okay, so I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. But if you all want to do this, just open and close your knees so you can feel how this ball and socket joint is rolling, okay? So it goes more like this, right? It's not linear. None of these movements are necessarily linear, right? If a lot of your joints are ball and socket, right? Then there is a full rotation that we're trying to explore. So that's one thing you can do in the morning is do all sorts of like silly creative movements on your own to lubricate your joints. The synovial fluid is something we want to keep moving in our bodies so we don't get creaky and stiff as we age, okay? And with the amount of repetitive motion we're all doing, it's extra essential, okay? But see, I'm sitting on my sits bones here, okay? I've got a little J spine happening here in the lumbar, but I can just keep my hips really free. So then when I want to communicate with my chambermates, I can play and roll, okay? I can roll onto this side. This is for pianists too, by the way. This way, backwards if I want forwards. But my most neutral, grounded position would be here. Okay, upright. And hopefully I look, you know, alert and awake, right? Because this is the ideal position for my body to stay energized and to not have a lot of energy blocks, energetic blocks, okay? If I do this, I can't breathe very well, right? So that creates an energetic block. That will make my eyes look dead. That will make me tired because I don't oxygenate the blood properly, okay? If I do the opposite, you know, your mom or someone said, sit up straight. What do? we sit up ramrod straight, which is too much, and we tighten the lower back. So if we can find a middle ground between those two extremes, then we get to have the idea of the standing tree, or in this case, I don't know, can we call it sitting tree? Where we have an upwards direction and a downwards direction, two different energetic vectors flowing at the same time, okay? So if you see me from the front, I look open, okay? My shoulders are down. My head is actually headed upwards towards the ceiling. It's like I have a little string and somebody is stretching my spine just a little bit to give me some extra height and space between the vertebrae. I can be very free in my legs and free in my shoulders. Why? Because my body is being supported from the place it should be supported, which is the pelvis, okay, the very center of the body. That's great. I see someone moving their arms and stuff. You guys can all, you know, feel free. Wiggle and move as much as you want during this talk. Probably the more the better, because this is about exploration and feeling your own body, right? You need to experience these things. Self-exploration is the key, okay? Because this will feel different for every person. We all have our very own particular habits and ideas and things that our teachers have told us, right? So we have to decide, every one of you has a different body type, okay? I have like maybe a medium long neck. Some people have very short necks. Some people have super long necks, especially if you play violin or viola. This becomes super important for the setup, okay? So that's another thing I wanna try and address. See what we're doing on time. Did I answer the cellist's question? Okay. Natalie. No, Donovan, no, who? Natalie. Yes, okay, good. Do we have any other questions so far before I continue up the body stacking here? Okay. Oh, thoughts on breathing. Okay, great. Yes. Okay, breathing is, it can be complicated, can also be relatively simple. If you work on keeping your body well stacked, well aligned, okay? So what that means is the hips, what we talked about so far, right? The ankles and the knees are springy, okay? Not locked. Then the hips have a very important role. You're not overarching your back like this, and you're not slumping this way, right? Many, many, many people in our society today sit like this. Okay, they do not have good articulation through the hip bones that we were just talking about. Okay, how many of you have seen somebody in the last 24 hours sitting like this? Anyone? Yeah, I mean, it's completely ubiquitous in our society. And if you look at pictures from 70 years ago, 80 years ago, this did not happen much in our society. This is actually an unfortunate byproduct of fashion and other things that I won't go into right now. But so it's important, I should have said this at the beginning, but you know, wear loose clothing when you practice and when you exercise, or you know, the type of clothing that does not restrict you in any way, okay? And I would say that on stage too, okay? Because if you practice grounding and you've practiced your music really hard and you know, smart, I should say, and then you go on stage and you get all dressed up and you're sucking your stomach in, and you're wearing high heels, so that makes your shoulders go up because you're pitched forward. Guess what that does to your sound? It ungrounds you, so your sound loses all of those low overtones, and it may also affect the way your hands work, okay? They may not work as well. So other people are asking about breathing. So the other thing that happens is you stop breathing, right? When you have all of your joints or parts of your body locked, what happens is the body feels uncomfortable, so, you know, fight, flight, or freeze can take over right away, okay? So one of the best things you can do is learn to actually just leave your breathing alone and work on your joints. Work on your structure. The skeletal structure is what assures us, if it's in good alignment, that the muscles will be able to do the job that they know how to do. Okay, this is more of our reptilian side. I guarantee you, unless you guys had, you know, complications at birth, that you all moved absolutely beautifully as toddlers, and then once we started going to school and stuff, the posture really deteriorates, our use. So there are certain tips about breathing that I think are helpful without getting too controlling about breathing. I mean, you know, you can talk to people who do pranayama, you know, breathing for yoga and all of this. So there are many different breathing systems. It's like there are many different exercises you can use to further your violin playing, right? But there are some basic facts about breathing that, once again, we have not been taught. So the idea that the exhale is actually a more important thing to talk about than the inhale. So when I studied with Karen Tuttle at Juilliard as a little freshman, she would always tell us to breathe out before we started something, not only to set the character, but also to set the tempo, and also to allow the diaphragm a chance to expand, okay? And actually, think of this as when you come home after a long day and you kind of sink into the sofa and you go, right? You breathe a sigh of relief. That is the optimal way to start playing your instrument, okay? Taking a quick inhale is no assurance that you will ever breathe again for the rest of the movement. Okay. And as a matter of fact, a lot of us do start, you know, by taking a quick in-breath sniff, and then you see I'm going into this like frozen chest position. My stomach is hard. And a lot of us don't even realize that we stop breathing altogether. So if you start by cueing something, let's see, why don't I use some more Bach? Okay, if we think of the beginning of Bach Cello Suite No. 5 as a bell tolling or something, I'll take an in-breath, kind of into beat 4. 4. Okay, so as I'm saying 4, of course, I'm exhaling. Okay, so it's the same thing as taking your step. You come up to prepare your step and you sink down into the downbeat. So, da, ya. Okay, you're grounding yourself by having the energy going down. Da, ya. So that's what you want to do with your breath, actually, is exhale. Okay, there are some exceptions to that. If you want to do something really quick and you want to go da, 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 maybe a quick in-breath would be appropriate. But I implore you, if this is brand new material for you, that you not give up, that you really seriously like practice exhaling in the character and the tempo of whatever you're working on and get used to that. It is possible. It's very awkward at first if you're not used to it, okay? But one of the things that I just read a whole book that was featured on NPR about breath. It's called Breathe. So if any of you want to read that book, it's an interesting book. But I'll tell you, throughout that whole book, not once did they mention the fact that when you exhale, you can simply wait for the air to rush back in. That is a reflexive process. You do not have to gulp the air back in, right? Otherwise, none of us would be here, right? We would forget to breathe, and then, of course, you know, we would fall over and die. So there is a reflexive action with breath, and this is why I say you want to try and stay out of the way. And actually, that's why I'm asking you to exhale. If you learn to exhale first, The inhale will naturally follow if you're working on these other things that we're talking about, okay? So the idea that the lungs work in a vacuum situation, right? You exhale, most of the air is emptied out of the lungs, and if you simply wait, let's do it together. I'll kind of like cue us. Here's your inhale. Exhale. Wait. And at some point, you know, your body takes that next breath. Do you want to do it again? Should we all do it again? Okay, so this may even take practice, right? Exhale. Okay, so I'm using my arm just to show you like what my breathing pattern is right now. Every one of us could be different. So I think the reason why the yogis and, you know, a lot of these other, oh, this is good, and someone's yawning, which means that you're oxygenating. Great. Oftentimes when you start relaxing, you'll find yourself feeling very tired. And that can be when the muscles are loosening up. The body often responds by yawning because the body is saying, oh, that felt so good and I'm expanding and now I have more room for my lungs and I can take in more air. So I'm going to yawn. So yawning, as we all know, is quite reflexive and is a very healthy thing to do. So one thing I'm doing is I'm sitting here is I'm feeling my sits bones and I'm just feeling that my lungs expand in all directions, okay, three-dimensionally. Did you know that your first rib is actually above your collarbone, way up here? So the lungs can expand all the way up here, out in the front, your back, okay? So this is something else that helps an awful lot when you're thinking about grounding is actually what, whoa, Sheila goes flying off the stool, what happens in your back. Can you see as I inhale and exhale this hand moving? Is that something you guys can see at all? Okay, so you guys can do that to yourselves if you're not sure. And some of you may not find that your back moves at all if you're tight in your lower back. Okay, so this is something that all of these things are super valuable. You know, you say, oh my gosh, I already have so many things to work on. You know, my teacher has given me a laundry list a mile long and I know I have all these things to fix. But, you know, this is not what this session is designed to do, is to put anyone in a greater panic. You know, the idea is to put yourself in a place of quietude and of grounding calm. Okay, grounding should only make you calmer. And have you breathing more deeply. Okay, so you really feel like you can make decisions from a calm, clear place and that your body is in beautiful balance and alignment. Okay, I have 14 questions here, something, let me just double check. Breathing through the belly versus breathing through the chest, great. So is the inhalation still on the beat that you're cueing on? Okay, good questions here. For this, let's see. Okay, so let's see, 3, 4. Let's just say for this tempo, for the slow tempo, I'm pretty much inhaling on 3, exhaling on 4, and then I'm going to take my inhale somewhere after I've actually played. Okay, so 4. Okay. Should I do it one more time? So 3 inhale, as I say 4, I'm exhaling, right? Because I'm speaking. 4. Okay. Okay, so I answered that one question. Yeah. So belly breathing. think the reason why there's such an emphasis on belly breathing is because of the idea that in, for lack of a better term, industrialized society, we tend to breathe very shallowly, okay? So that also has to do with if you're worried and you suck in your stomach, for all the different reasons that we might do that, what that does is it creates usually quite a shallow space in which you can breathe, right? Because if you've got all of your abdominals and the different layers of muscles down here tightened because you don't want your belly to come out, then what happens is you can only breathe up here. Now, I find, on the other hand, if I focus on belly breathing, then sometimes I don't allow my shoulders to rise because I'm only filling up the bottom half with air and I'm not really filling up the top half of air. And as I just explained, you know, you've got a rib up here, which means the lungs actually fill up all of this too. Can you see my shoulders? Okay, so ideally, if I'm taking in and allowing my lungs to expand in 3 dimensions, they'll be going up, down, out, all around, okay? You know, sometimes the hand gestures I find are really helpful. You could pretend like you're wearing those floaties in the pool, you know, like I was just at the beach yesterday, there was a little kid wearing his cute little floaties here with the air, you know, so he doesn't go under. And you can just practice feeling that your lungs are filling up, and that allows everything to like gracefully rise and then come back down. Okay. So let's see, did I answer? Do I have any thoughts on avoiding recovering from playing injuries? Many. Everything that we've talked about thus far will help to keep you from getting injured and will also help to heal you if you have been injured. Okay, rest and recovery is one of the most important things that I think we often forget about. I mean, people who have been injured, they probably should be taking breaks every 10 minutes. Okay, this is something that you can't underestimate, the power of the human body to heal itself if you only give it a chance. And we're very poor in this society, you know, on the go all the time, right? The shallow breathing, the not taking time to ground ourselves are what get us to places of injury. Okay, not the only things, but it certainly doesn't help, okay? It sends us over the edge. If we already have, you know, certain habits that we're bringing to the instrument that are not biomechanically healthy, then yes, the first thing that happens is we get, you know, into a situation where you have to practice a lot or something, and then things start to hurt, things start to get tight, and you're forced, the body forces you to take that rest. The body says, enough. You haven't listened till now. I'm telling you, I'm not moving a muscle until you figure this out, right? So it's extremely important. Really, the whole concept of grounding has to do with listening to your own body. So, you know, if you have to take a break, say in your string quartet, because you're recovering from injuries and you say something to the group and they say, come on, let's just do another 20 minutes. We're almost done here. What do you say? Do you say, yeah, okay. No, you have to do this for yourself. And you say, I'm sorry, but I need this break for me. I'm recovering, you know, whatever you need to do. But these are the sorts of things that, you know, it's difficult, right? Because you want to be a team player, right? Americans talk all day long about being a team player, but it's very hard to take care of each individual when the team always comes first. So all of us have to make these choices sometimes, how to balance, you know, the different things at play, right? That we're asked to do. So if you do this in your own private practice, you know, before you go into these group rehearsals, you'll be so far ahead of the game, right? You'll be able to manage the strains and the stresses better. You start to learn how to do little movements and stretches sitting in a chair in orchestra that's not going to disturb your neighbor, okay? I can do things like this, you know, hopefully that won't bother anyone. I can make sure that I'm keeping my shoulders down as I play. I can monitor my breathing. So if I feel like I've gone into belly breathing or, you know, shallow chest breathing, that I just try and track my shoulders going up and down, okay? And I just take a moment to be clear about what's happening internally, okay, rather than being so externally focused all the time. Okay, let's see. I tend to arch my back and sink my weight. Engaging the core, yeah, great, okay, great question. I'm gonna read this one out loud because I think this applies to a lot of us. I tend to arch my back and sink my weight into it, presumably to subconsciously counter the weight of the viola. When I catch myself doing that, I try to engage my core, but engaging the core is a bit of an abstract concept for me. How should we physically understand what engaging the core means? Great question, and I think this varies very much depending on, you know, your own physique and how big your viola is, how heavy it is, how you hold the viola. So let me just say a couple of things about that. One thing I've found is that if you hold the viola way out to the side, this is, you know, when I say with Karen Tuttle, she really wanted us to open up this shoulder. So she had a lot of us really having the viola as far out to the side as, you know, we could do, depending on how long the arms were, of course. But that kind of helped to open up this shoulder. Sometimes it would close down this shoulder. But then the other thing is that kind of the weight of the instrument, if, you know, we're going to talk about plumb lines again now. Let me see if I can get all this in the camera. If my viola is way out here, a majority perhaps of the weight of the viola is now like off of my leg, if you can see that. Okay, so all of this is out in front of my body, or to, you know, to the side and out in front. So if I bring the viola in here, so I make sure that part of the viola here is touching my collarbone. Okay, that's a very important place. So I have skeletal connection with the wood of the instrument, or perhaps even the metal of the chin rest. And I try and position the viola over my left leg here. This means that my body is taking most of the weight of the viola. Now, the other thing is that if we play with a loose neck, which is one of the absolute sacred tenets of Karen Tuttle's work, the head weighs between 8 and 12 pounds, so it should act as a very natural counterbalance. So if you guys want to practice doing this, like you're listening to me and you're just resting your head on your fist, and you just nod, kind of like, uh-huh. That uh-huh is the loosening of the atlanto-occipital joint and perhaps some of the higher vertebrae at the base of the skull that keep you loose. So pretend you're like on a bus and you fall asleep. That is this natural loosening of the musculature in your neck that helps to counterbalance the weight of the viola, okay, which is super important for us. So, you know, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid and in high school, I played like this and I gritted my teeth, and I really thought I had to hold on with my neck in order to hold the instrument. I didn't understand that the natural weight of my head would take care of most of that. So that's a very important mental, not to mention physical shift that we can all explore and work on. Sometimes that requires a different chin rest, so you can hook here on the back and you can actually pivot and say your uh-huh. So you're touching here somewhere on your chin rest and you can go up and down, okay? So when you get to the tip, I don't have to, you know, squeeze things out. I can release. Okay, that's like, how about we do this exercise? Are you guys up for this? So keep your neck really loose and just kind of swirl your arm kind of quickly to gain some momentum. And if your neck is fairly loose, you'll have a gentle whiplash effect, right? As if you were in a car crash. It's that natural reflexive action of the head on the top of the spine that we're accessing. Okay, so we also have that at the tip. Okay, not even just at the tip, but that's one of the things that is super important to understand if you want to stack all of these body parts for a great balance. What happens is that the top of the neck, you know, where the skull meets the spine, has to stay wobbly. Okay, and that's something that, you know, you often don't see under the chin players doing, right? We treat the chin and the neck as a vice grip. So let's think about this for a second, the ramifications of that. If we want to think of the viola or the violin or any musical instrument as an extension of the human voice, this is a very sacred area to keep soft and open. Okay, this would be the throat chakra, for those of you who are familiar with the chakras in yoga. So what do you think happens to the vibrations in your body if you're stiff here and then you go to touch your viola and play something? Okay, when you go to play, you're setting vibrations in motion, and you would like to foster that, right? You want to feed off of that and encourage those vibrations to come through the viola. So if you use your head and neck as a C-clamp, and then what that usually does is makes the jaw very tight, and the other thing it does is, look, whoops, my shoulder comes up. Oh my gosh, so now I'm really in a, you know, like this C-clamping position. What happens is it can reduce the volume and the resonance of the instrument by, I want to say, at least 50%. Okay, so you guys can all experiment with this stuff on your own. This is why Karen Tuttle would tell us we had to learn how to hold the instrument nose to navel. So she wanted us to be in speaking posture when we played the instrument, that we brought the instrument to us, fitted it into us, and then I was good to go. Okay, so I have my natural head weight. I do not have to be tight on this side of the neck or that side. So when you see people, and this is very tight, these mastoids, whatever they're called, can't remember the name right now, scalenes. If this is tight, that means that, you know, you're really putting a lot of excess pressure, not only on your neck, but on your head and then the instrument. Okay, so that tightens the sound. Okay, so any excess tension you have in the body that you're carrying does show up in the sound. I guess I would like to continue a little bit. Stamina. Okay, good. Yes, TMJ. A lot of tension for the shoulders. Yeah, let's get to the shoulders too. What I can say about TMJ, which is temporomandibular joint, it should be like TMJS syndrome, which means that the two joints up here that connect the jaw into the skull get very tight. If you practice what I was just showing you, releasing your neck at the tip, you can even just practice, like put the instrument up and look at the ceiling. And then you're going to do silly stuff like, ah, and stick your tongue out really wide. Ah. You can also like chew on a carrot, okay? But those sorts of things are great for like loosening up jaw muscles. The jaw muscles are some of the strongest in the body. And your tongue too, you wouldn't believe all the tension you can hold in your mouth and everything, which of course will also affect your breathing, right? So isn't there something in yoga like the lion's breath or something where you go, ah. Okay, those sorts of things in yoga are actually super great for us because it opens your eyes wide, you open your jaw, and then you stick out your tongue as far as you can, okay? These are things that we don't do in polite society. So we get tied up in knots because we're worried about looking rude or something, you know, acting rude towards people. They won't understand what we're doing. So, you know, do it in the privacy of your own, the freedom and privacy of your own practice room, right? But if you guys all want to do that with me, really open, and you'll start to understand, you do that a couple of times. You know, grinding of the teeth is now at an all-time high apparently in our society because of stress, that many people grind their teeth in their sleep. So you can only imagine how much worse that would be for us, you know, with the under the chin people especially, right? Because not only do we have a lot of stress, but we also then have the physicality of the balancing of the instrument. Okay, so yes, let me go on to the shoulders, because of course the shoulders are very important. And by the way, when we're done, I mean, I'll end just like, I'll try and end a little bit after 12 because I don't want to keep you guys all day. But you're all welcome to email me if you have any questions. It's Sheila B. Violist at gmail.com, SHEILAB, Violist at Gmail, okay? And I'll try and answer some questions. And actually, I may answer some of the questions through YouTube too, because a lot of people have the same sorts of questions, and I might do some short video clips, okay? So I'll let you guys know, because we're not gonna be able to cover everything. There's a lot of great questions. Okay, so shoulders are very important. I'm sure all of you have heard of a shoulder girdle, okay? So we have two ball and socket joints, okay, where this part of the arm comes in and connects. And what does it connect to? Well, it connects to the sternoclavicular joint, to this clavicle, okay? This is you've got two clavicles, okay? If you want to palpate that, here are the clavicles, and these are your sternoclavicular joints. This is actually where each one of your arms connects to the torso. So if you thought your arm started here and went to here, now we have been re-educated to understand that this is where your arm connects into the torso. This is part of the shoulder girdle too. So you should be able to roll and palpate while you're rolling. Okay, if you can see how this is moving, it should all move. And you can also see that I have very big muscles that come straight into this point. So if I'm craning my neck to the side and doing the C-clamp, look what happens. This muscle starts to get very tight. And guess what that does? That is going to reduce the rotation of this. That leads to my shoulder. And guess what the shoulder is holding up? And all that the left shoulder especially is responsible for, right? So the idea for good biomechanical health is to have full rotation of all joints. Just because we only use 1/4 of, say, of the shoulder joint in our violin or viola playing does not mean that we shouldn't be doing full rotation of those joints every day if we want to stay healthy on and off the instrument. Okay, so for whomever it was, and I know it will not just be one of you who says, I have so much shoulder tension, and I think you were talking about left shoulder, whoever that was who typed about that. Yes, okay. So the other thing you have to realize is that we have a back side to the shoulder girdle, the two scapula. Okay, this is what my teacher would call the back wings. Okay, these are the shoulder blades. They are also connected to the bones of the shoulders, okay? So she spent a lot of time freeing up our scapulas, okay? She would do that by telling us that the elbow and the wrist had to be on the same plane or higher, which now we've decided is perhaps exaggerated. But I will tell you, if you want to free up your shoulders, you need to work on freeing up your scapulas too. So if you guys all want to do these silly things with me, they are exceptionally freeing, and you may find that you can breathe a lot more deeply when you do these, okay? Because now I'm rolling everything. I'm rolling the back of the shoulder girdle and the front, okay? So for those of you who swim, it's nice, or for those of us who don't do too much swimming, I air swim, okay? I do whatever, yeah, whatever motions I can come up with. How does the butterfly go? I don't remember that one so well, but you know, you can do all of your swimming strokes in the air, and all of that stuff is really helpful. We also have chicken wings, okay? Can we all do our chicken wings? These are super helpful. Keeping the shoulders down and moving the elbows up. And look at my wrists and my hands, very loose. Loosey-goosey. And make sure you're feeling your sits bones as you're doing that for good balanced grounding and stacking of your torso if you're sitting. Okay, so those directions are super important. I like to palpate here when I do shoulder rolls. Try that. If you have never done this, see if your shoulder roll is not enhanced. And I'm trying to stretch my arm out long. I'm not locking my elbow, but I'm also not doing this, right? I want, can you see me here? Full rotation like that. What I find that for students who didn't know that their arms attached to their torso here, once they realize that and they touch here and then do these motions, the motion is much rounder, larger, and smoother, okay? And then the last movement I would recommend to loosen up the shoulders is this. Okay, this is of course just bowing. Notice I'm alternating which arm goes on top so I don't get into any patterns. Okay, we all have a dominant hand and a dominant leg. So you want to try, because what we do is so asymmetrical on the instruments, except for you lucky cellists who have the least asymmetry of all of us, we really need to try and be conscious of the fact that, for example, I'm right-handed. I try and do things like reach for doorknobs with my left hand to try and offset the load, the responsibilities of one side of the body. It also creates different pathways in the brain, so it makes you a more flexible human being, which can only help you on your instrument. Okay, let's see. Shoulders, neck, head. Yes, let me see. How are we doing? Left hand and finger tension. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that for a second. Okay. All of this foundational work that we've been talking about, the stacking, loosening of the head, finding your joints, aligning your skeleton, all lead us to a powerful and newfound freedom in the extremities. Okay, so notice I'm doing this. Okay, we had a Karen Tuttle workshop the other week, and Kim Kashkashian did a great little session, and she said, well, you do this and you do that.
Yeah.
And this is the simplest way to explain things. Somebody's unmuted.
No, I only have this.
Ishmael, please mute. Sorry. There we go. Thanks. So if you go and you stick out your wrist a lot when you play, this is going to make you very tired. Why? Because the body wants to do this. The body wants to be here. This is the wrist at rest. Okay. This is good hand, wrist, elbow alignment. So if your hand is rolled over in this position, we get, you know, people call it puppy paws, or, you know, loosey-goosey, as my teacher used to call it, right? So we can all do that. So you really feel, notice I'm putting my elbows up really high. I'm keeping my shoulders down, but elbows high, okay? And that keeps my pectoral muscles through here open and long, okay? We want to keep this area of the chest very open, and we do that by not recruiting the pec muscles. So for those of you who are lifting weights, you got to be super careful that you are not overusing your pecs. okay? Because that leads to very poor arm use, okay? It gets too tight, you know, so you're all hunched over like this because your pecs are pulling everything in towards the center, okay? None of us need that. We spend way too much time on the computer. So we want to stay open like this, open and long. Okay, so this position, I mean, I call it the tendinitis position or carpal tunnel. This is not the way the hand likes to be in this position. If your forearm, if this side of your arm is facing towards the floor, you can, if you really let go of your wrist, you will see where the natural position of the hand lies. Now that's very different for everyone. I've had students who weighted tables and their wrist is like back here in a natural resting position. So don't think that, you know, your position has to look like everyone else's. What we find with human bodies is that every single person is unique and we have to honor that, okay? So someone's wrist may look like that at rest, but if you shake it like this, do this first, and then this way, I'm keeping my shoulders down. This is actually the ideal position for your hand and arm in this way. If you play like this, you can play 6 hours a day if you need to, and you will be fine. If you do anything else, you may or may not get away with it. Okay, that depends on your muscle mass. If you're a woman, you have less muscle mass. If you play violin, you can get away with a lot of stuff that we violists can't. Okay, but it doesn't mean it makes your best sound. Okay, if we can just take one moment to see how we move the fingers and get a little bit into vibrato, which of course is going to be very different. Your teachers have all, I'm sure, said different things about vibrato. So what we need to understand is that we are moving the knuckles, the base knuckles, in order to play on the fingerboard. So I demonstrate that by this. We can all do this. Can we all drum our fingers? Okay, I'm doing it in the air because I don't have anything here, but you'll see my elbow is in perfect alignment with my wrist. Okay, this is a straight line through here. So the best way to do that, yes, I see some people, let me see. Okay. If you're not used to doing this, best to do it on a flat surface. Okay, so I have this flat surface and I'm going to drum my fingers. Pretend you're drumming your fingers on a piano, but you do want your elbow supported. Okay, so you can find that natural, beautiful line that's going to be lines parallel to the floor right now. But I am lifting and dropping each individual finger. Each finger has an individual weight and balance from the base knuckles. If you look at the inside of the hand, the base knuckles come all the way into here. Okay, so that's different than what we realize from the top of the hand. We think, oh, the knuckles are here. Actually, the knuckles are so big and deep. If you do this, can you wave goodbye to me like that in sort of a stiff way? Like, then you find how these knuckles move from. Many people do not play from the base knuckles, and that makes you tired pretty quickly. So if you're drumming your fingers like this, I think you'll notice that it's pretty fast. Maybe not for all of you, but for many of you. So what I always say to my students is, you know what? If I can drum here, look what I'm going to do to play the viola. This. No difference. And that is the fastest way to do it. Look at my wrist. Look at my wrist here. And I'm just rotating up and doing the same thing. Okay, so if you have a straight wrist, that's pretty good. If you start curving your wrist this way, that's where we get into what I call carpal tunnel syndrome. And if you want to test that for yourself to see what works best for you, do this, scrabble around trying to drum your fingers this way with your wrist in this position, and then try it like this. And I think you will discover that this works way better than this. Okay, so a lot of these things, you know, this is biomechanics, right? This has nothing, well, it has everything to do with violin, viola, and cello playing, but it's biomechanics. So what we know is that our bodies are a natural resonating chamber. If we agree that we want to sing through the instrument that we play, that is the ideal situation for us as a musician. Maybe we also want to dance through the instrument we play, right? And speak through the instrument we play. All of those things, if our body is in great physical alignment and we adhere to the laws of nature, which are the laws of biomechanics and physics, we will sound better. We will resonate more in our body, which is one big resonating chamber, and we will have a beautiful, as my teacher would call it, cuddling relationship holding the instrument, and we send as much of those vibrations through the instrument and out into the air, right? And to our people, to our audiences. So we're trying to get rid of the blockages, right? This is what we all do our whole lives, I feel like, and that's the beauty of practicing, right? We get to work on ourselves every day in the peace and quiet of, you know, the practice room, where no one else can tell us, you know, it's time to do this, it's time to do that. Okay, letter A, quick, one more time when you're not ready. So practicing is the most beautiful and perfect opportunity to work on ourselves, right? To listen to our own bodies and to explore, especially summer is a great time to explore how our bodies were naturally meant to work. So generally, if it moves easily and smoothly, it's good. If it hurts, it's not good. If it's sore, it's not good. If it's tight, it's not good. So what we know is that we could do something smarter, right? It's not a question of playing the game harder, it's playing the game smarter, okay? Practicing more when you're already tense is not gonna give you a better result. It's gonna give you a worse result and maybe even hurt you. So understanding the laws of biomechanics, the rules, I mean, I hate to be so kind of rigid about it, but you know, there are rules of physics and of gravity that we all should have learned in school. Many of us did not. So if we're suffering under, you know, ignorance in terms of these things that we should have learned in school, and then we go and just blindly, you know, do some strange form that doesn't follow these natural laws, we will lose. We will lose that game. So, I mean, you know, considering that you guys, hopefully you're all signed up to do your, you know, your practice logs and everything, and you're, you know, you've got kind of newfound conviction that you're going to do your 4 to 6 hours every day this summer of practice. Please practice mindfully. And hey, if you want to check in with me and you know, have me answer a question for you or something, if it's okay with your teachers, I'm happy to do it. I have spent decades working on this stuff. I've done Alexander technique, Feldenkrais, Gokula method, I mean, yoga, all of these different things that really help to further my understanding of how the human body functions and how I can bring that to viola playing. And as some of you know, Karen Tuttle was, you know, a pioneer and one of the world's foremost experts in how to play the viola holistically and safely. I mean, she saved more students' careers from, you know, tendonitis and other problems than we can even count at this point. So we have wonderful bodies of knowledge now that can be explored, and yet there's still a ton of myths and misunderstandings out there about how the human body works. But what we do know is that you will actually be able to sound better if you work with your body instead of against it. Okay, so let me see if there's one last little question here I could perhaps answer, although it's probably time. Okay, so let's see. Is there any last burning question for 2 minutes that I could answer? Just one last little thing, or we can stop here. It's now 12:12. Okay, great. Well, you're off to a good start for the summer, I hope. So I'll look forward to seeing some of you violists this week. And I hope you all take care. It was great to see all of you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to find me. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.